Welcome to 5 and 5 from the One-Stop Co-op Shop, where I discuss 5 key elements of a game in about 5 minutes. I'm Michael Kelly, and today I'm looking at Castle Itter from Dan Versen Games. No disclaimer needed, one of our viewers let me borrow his copy. Castle Itter focuses on the so-called strangest battle of World War II, where German and Austrian and French soldiers all fought against the SS in the final days of the war. It's designed by David Thompson, one of my favorite wargame designers, and it uses basically the same system as Pavlov's House that I enjoyed earlier this year. So will I like this one too, or more? Let's find out and get to the list. I'm starting with a pro at number 5, and that's how the game manages to work in some fun historical touches in a still streamlined way. So the Battle of Castle Itter was certifiably insane. You had a French prisoner who was also a tennis superstar putting on a German uniform and running through their lines to call for reinforcements. You had US soldiers parking a tank at the front of the castle to cut down the German advance before it was blown up. And the game does a great job of offering you mechanical reasons to try to recreate what history did, while still giving you enough choice to avoid it when the situation doesn't seem right, and it's all smoothly integrated with just a few extra rules, not the chrome you might see in some war games. I just think it's really smooth and nicely done, and got me more interested in the history of the entire battle. Another pro to the game's design, something I love, is the line of sight rules. Now this was basically the same in Pavlov's House, where your units will be on spaces showing one or more colors, and the colors correspond to spaces the German units are on, so you can see who you can shoot at a glance and also who can affect you. But because of the nature of the battle, Pavlov's House had a fairly limited use of this system, whereas Castle Itter is a 360-degree siege with enemies coming from all over the place. You can make tough choices about who needs to go where to cover different sides of the castle. You can see everything at a glance, who can shoot who. It just works super well, and it's really, really clever. Now for my number 3, I'm going to call it a mix, although it still sort of leans pro to me, and that's how you move around the castle to the different positions in the game. The only reason this one is mixed and might frustrate some players is that movement sometimes feels so limited. You only get 5 actions a turn, and basically every action you do will exhaust the person. You'll need to spend another action to unexhaust them, and to move to a different location in the castle, you have to do an action. So you're really losing 2 actions every time you want to switch somebody from a gatehouse to a keep or something like that. But if you take away that potential frustration, the movement and the placement of your soldiers is great. You need to really carefully consider which parts of the castle are getting hammered hardest, try to put a nice mix of units there. Some units support others in specific ways. You need German officers to keep the German militia in line. And then something else that I quite frankly love is that setup is super quick, because basically none of your units start on the board, and for the first 4 turns you just place 5 different units on the board and take an action with them. So it makes the game set up really quickly, and then it kind of develops in an organic way as you see how the enemies are attacking. So the initial movement is awesome, and it'll also set up long-reaching implications for how you deal with the rest of the battle. So like line of sight, it's just really cool. And I've got a big pro for you at number 2, and that's how the enemies activate. So like in Pavlov's House, you draw 3 cards each enemy's phase. They might be shelling the castle and weakening its defenses. They might lay down suppressing fire or put more units on the board. But what I love here is the great feeling of variety. Yes, the cards are separated into 4 numbers, so they're going to come out in sort of the same basic order each game, but because there's such a wide range of possibility for where units spawn and which parts of the castle get hit, you're going to have a very different feeling each game. Maybe the east approach is swarmed in this game, but in the next one, the northwest is the problem. And maybe this spot that you wanted to have all your defenders in gets shelled really early, and you have to run people out of there or they're all going to get killed. So it has a great feeling of diverse play even as you act out the exact same battle, and all that has tactical implications that'll majorly change the way you play if you want to win. Finally, we're going to end with one more pro, although this one might go to a mix for some people, and that's how your actions go and how people become exhausted by them. So as I already mentioned, you take actions on your turn, 5 of them, and pretty much all of them will make someone become exhausted, and then you can spend another action later to unexhaust them and use them again, or you can use use commanders to unexhaust a bunch of people en masse. Now, the reason this is a pro for me is because the choices of what you want to do are so tough, and there are so many things you want to deal with. There's always more Germans than you can handle, and you have these other objectives, like do you want to get people out of the tank before it gets blown up? Do you want to help a French prisoner escape? Do you want to bring out other French prisoners to score a greater victory and inspire your troops? But with all those tough choices, turns just fly. I mean, watch my playthrough. I got through the entire thing with rules explanation in like 45 minutes, which for a game that feels as epic as this does is just crazy. But to put it out there, the reason I think this might be a mix for some players is that because it takes an entire action to flip somebody back up and nothing actually happens, there are many turns where you don't really do anything. You just set yourself up for another turn. And some players I think might find that feeling too static. It doesn't for me, but it might for you. So overall, if you can't tell, I adore Castle Itter. It's super accessible, it's really quick to play, it teaches you about some really interesting history, has amazing variety, lots of ways to modify the difficulty, and it is just tense and fun and exciting every time I play. Now that being said, you might want to show some caution with this one if you think the movement rules feel too static, if you think unexhausting people won't be exciting. And finally, I should say that even though it didn't make it into my review this time, there is a ton of dice rolling in this one, and I think it balances out because you just roll so many, but if you really hate randomness and can't deal with luck and hate the fact that you just spent a bunch of ammo to shoot at a machine gunner and miss completely, this might not be a game for you. But for me, Castle Itter, amazing. I cannot recommend this strongly enough for solo gamers out there. Good gaming, and I'll see you at the next stop.